welcome the mandate given to the chair at the last European President to address the issue. I would like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your proposal.
Mr. Chair, despite the praiseworthy attempt to lessen through a codification of humanitarian law the negative consequences of hostilities on civilian population, all too often we receive from various theaters of war evidence of atrocious crimes and grave offenses against individuals and their dignity, perpetrated with utter disregard for the most elementary consideration of their humanity. Images of corpses, of mutilated or decapitated bodies of our brothers and sisters who are tortured, crucified, and demeaned even in their remains are an affront of the conscience of mankind, recently said the Pope to the Conference of International Humanitarian Law held in the Vatican.
Your Excellency, do you think that the UN member states do care more about dignity of a person when it comes to a war than, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah. It is so difficult to answer this question from, let's say, church point of view, because we, the Church, the Holy See, decided immediately after the Second World War, it was a major decision, which was immediately broken after, that the Holy See will not participate in the international agreements with purely political goals. This, how to say, decision that was based also on the status of the Holy See and the Vatican City State, as you know, immediately after the Second World War, was immediately put into the question because the international community wanted the Holy See to be member of Atomic Energy Organization. It means it was tremendous tragedy that brought us back to the point which was somehow compromising for the Holy See and for the Church. Why compromising? Not compromising because our standards and our, let's say, approach would be somehow willing to compromise to things that are immoral and are brutal. No. Compromising because it seems that our participation would give certain, let's say, procedures or standards of behavior, certain legitimacy. This is not the case. We participate to avoid the consequences of conflict. And I think if you make a reassessment, you are asking me the last 10 years, what happened as this, let's say, means to damage, to make bad, or how to say, damage the neighbor or enemy is much bigger, are much bigger. But on the other side, we have to say also a kind of international sensibility or responsibility toward people involved in the war is getting bigger, and it's growing almost exponentially. This is not, unfortunately, it does not have immediate effect on the ground. The ground battles, as we see, are tremendous destruction. It's total. But the conscience of the international community is getting much more sensible and much more progressed.
So these meetings here that take place so often, you know, every year, they really have an impact, mid-term and long-term, you would say, right?
I think it, yes. You know, also, let's say what we don't want to say, also means if we have selective, how to say, damage making, you know, it's always better than indiscriminate. Means to make a selective damage, or, you know, are bigger. And I think also this is a contribution. Let's say we not have this general destruction that was, you know, let's say, absolutely destroying the cities in order to get one military goals. I think all these things are now under consideration, and everybody considers, even although we cannot accept, we can always agree against any spending, military spending, and especially excessive military spending, we think that certain consequences are visible. That minimum protection of the dignity of every person, which ought to be guaranteed with great vigilance through the dutiful implementation of international instruments, is all too often violated in the name of military or political demands. The numerous victims of conflicts leave us no room for inaction or compromise. The flexibility of CCW and its open floor nature for further developments of international humanitarian law must take into account adequately the nature of modern armed conflicts and the physical, moral, and spiritual suffering that accompany them.
So what are moral and spiritual sufferings?
In the past, as you know, we had conflicts that were somehow state-run, or state were the actors of the conflict. In the recent time, we have not state actors. It means fundamentalistic groups of people who have very radical ideas and very little respect for the human person.
Like the terrorist groups?
Like terrorist groups, and I would say also people who would like to make a state out of nothing. No? So usually these people are very sensitive on religious appartenance. It means for them matters what religion do you have. And we discovered recently, and the Holy See was very much active, and many other states were active in this field, that we spotted some sense of Christians being targeted, specifically targeted. But when we speak about moral and spiritual damage, certainly we do not speak only about the Catholic Church or the Christians. We speak also about the other groups and other religions, which are probably less protected than the Catholic Church, which is very well established, and therefore also exposed to much more indiscriminate and savage oppression.
So spiritual sufferings, let's get back to that. Spiritual sufferings, is this something that damages your soul in a way? Is this like trauma? Is this those?
I think it is, and this is what we are saying. Spiritual suffering, it means that you are limited or forced to, in order to change your belonging, religious belonging.
So you're forced to join another religion?
Or hide it, or modify it, or adapt it, or, you know, the situation of brutality and pressure are enormous, and when you see pictures, you know that there is no much discussion. It means this is just suffering. The illusion of a clean war is in stark contrast with the reality of dramatic, immediate, and long-term humanitarian impact of the use of explosive weapons in populated areas. Beyond the fact that such explosive weapons can never be legitimately utilized according to the rules of international humanitarian law.
Now, are there any wars that are humane, civilized, or dignifying? Does this exist?
I think this is what you said is you are referring probably to our term, which was put into quotation mark, a clean war, no? But we are exactly saying that there is not such a thing as a clean war. It means war is always dirty. War is always tremendous defeat of humanity. Now, what we are defending in international organizations, we, not that much the Holy See and the Catholic Church, but say the international community, is to have all the behavior of actors also in the conflict, with the state actors in the conflict, must be regulated by international humanitarian law. As long as you comply with international humanitarian law, is much better than not to comply with that law. It's not enough even that, but it means certain also, let's say, violent procedures, violent conflicts must be somehow regulated as much as it can be through international humanitarian law, and Holy See considers that any agreement, even if not sufficient, even if not complete and perfect, is much better than no agreement. This is why we stand very firmly behind the formulation and codification of international humanitarian law.
And of course, the key is the implementation and to enforce the violations. Isn't that a big problem these days?
It is, let's say, our voice is much more calling to the parties. You know, now we have in the international community, you have many states, let's say 150 states that have conviction, but they have not much power. If you are a small group of states, they have almost all power, especially military and political power. And I think we have to stick with the majority and be, how to say, be do contribute, collaborate, be useful to international community in order to make further progressive, positive steps. And I think this is what we are doing. It's not a technical discussion. It's not that we have influence that we could change, let's say. But I think we are very much visible. And our voice, although it's always very moderate and very well balanced and very, how to say, collaborative and positive, I think it's people are listening to us and they're happy that we participate in a discussion that's almost certainly concerning the majority of humanity and certainly important religions and among them also Christian religions. The Holy See wishes to reiterate that beside the fact that the use of weapons must comply with the rules of international humanitarian law, it is the use of incendiary weapons, together with the magnitude of their effects on people, that should be regulated or prohibited, regardless of the purpose for which the weapons are primarily designed.
Why this approach of either or? Why not just flat out asking for prohibition?
As we said already before, every participation in the meetings like this is a little bit of compromise for the Holy See and puts us in difficult situation. Certainly, the idea, the papacy, the Pope is clearly against, against. There is no doubt. It's something can be done, but not the others. But let's say, in the real life, and if we would like to be useful in the real life, even regulation is better than nothing, than prohibition would be normal. It's interesting to see, that if you have common mind, let's say people who would sit down and say, prohibition would be the only solution, but what is the fact? The fact is that when you come to the conflict, nobody accepts any standard. So it means even compromise, adapting, moderating is better than nothing. And this is exactly what we have to do. The church must think of people. When you see a picture of children crying and mothers hurrying around, and I don't know, this is the concern of the church. And we have to do that. And this is why, let's say, when we participate, and our participation is, how to say, encouragement of everybody to move toward the right direction, and hopefully the mankind will be able to reach this point.
It seems sometimes, it's like nothing had changed from the Stone Ages except the weapons and so forth. But if there's war, people seem not to think of rules and regulations. It doesn't work together, rules and regulations and fighting. Huh?
That is exactly what is a sad side of the human history. But again, we have to say, if you see globally, if you read history books of 20th century, I think they are more concerned about the dignity of a person than used to be, and at least nobody defends the position that somebody would have right of killing somebody without the discrimination, without the reason, so it means we have to be happy with small progress. It's insufficient. The Pope stays very strongly behind that we should participate, advocate the poor and those who are not protected, and we are very strongly committed to do everything that we can in order to alleviate sufferings of those who have no protection. The work conducted last week with the active participation by states, academia and civil society in the framework of the group of governmental experts proved the urgency and far-reaching implications of the discussion on autonomous weapon systems. The disappearance of concealment of the human agent is problematic not only from the point of view of moral responsibility, but also from the point of view of the foundation of law. My delegation hopes that substantial progress will be made next year so that the common ethical and legal framework based on the dignity and the primacy of the human person can be established.
Do you think, Your Excellency, that the path towards electronic personality or legal status as human person for a military killer robot can be stopped or banned?
We participated in the discussion on autonomous lethal weapons recently, exactly because the Holy See sees in this a big danger. So it would be somehow having war, killing the people, and at the end nobody will be really responsible. If you, let's say, somebody must be responsible, in that case we will find a responsible system, robot or autonomous weapon that proceeded in the wrong way. This is a certainly tragical conclusion if somebody would make it like that. We are certainly, from the human point of view, from the, let's say, religious point of view, the responsibility only personal, even collective responsibility is a problem. No, how can you be collectively responsible if somebody is misbehaving? You know, so it means 1,000 people can suffer such. The responsibility from the moral and ethical point of view is personal. And according to the law, if you are, let's say, a president of state or you have a responsibility that you... So I think the problem is that we are using these terms in not appropriate way and we mislead people. Certainly what is important is that we are concerned. This is the way we should not go to war. We have to stop. And, you know, usually we learn from big tragedies. Now we hope that we anticipate big tragedies and that what we are doing could help us to avoid coming tragedies. They are always almost knocking on the door of the history, you know. So it means it is our participation that should be also of early warning to avoid certain development that can be extremely negative for the human being and for the society.
Also, we should not forget, at the end of the day, someone manufactured and programmed these weapons. So there are parties that are responsible, you know. But it's difficult to get the company or to so forth. But it's people did that, people created.
Certainly, it means you know, this is exactly. There is enormous hypocrisy behind any dealing with armaments and war, you know. We have this enormous business. The Holy Father is continuously speaking against the arms trade. No? Arms trade is one of the biggest trade, bigger than education, bigger than social security, bigger than anything else, and we still don't like to speak about that. We have to speak. We have to be against. We have to make early warning cries, and we have to be courageous. And hopefully, and it's certainly so, you know, the consequences will come. Limited, probably in time, distributed in time, but certainly we hope that it's going to produce a benefit for the mankind, yes.
I think it's also a very difficult or a challenge for you as a priest, as a Catholic priest, to sit in meetings where people basically talk about war and how to fight war in this way and the other. While war, there is no good war. War is bad in general. But with your presence, you try at least to help to minimize the sufferings wherever possible.
And also we have to stand behind very strictly, you know, that what we do is not a standard procedure. We do not speak as many others. The others speak in terms of pragmatism, in terms of things, of result. We speak on behalf of the certain, how to say, conscious of humanity, which is a human conscience, which is a religious conscience, which is sensibility and advocacy for those who have no voice, for the poor and those who are going to be at the end the most damaged. It means people who are not willing to be involved and children and those who have no protection. Rich people and people who have protection, they escape, but poor stay and they suffer.
So we're glad you are here and do this cry so that people hopefully listen and change.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.